In case you guys are new here, you might not know, but I really like Dungeons and Dragons. I started DMing about 2 years ago, and I thought, what the hell? I haven't posted on this channel for a while, and I really like talking about D&D, so why not kill two birds with one stone and post a video about D&D? Like I said, I started DMing about 2-ish years ago. We're going on 3 now, and I've really enjoyed it. However, DMing can be really hard. I know, no surprise there. There are a couple things that I think I would have really liked to know before I started dungeon mastering in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, again, I've only been DMing for about 2 years. I'm not some savant. I haven't been doing this for decades, and I'm not claiming to be some expert. However, I do want to at least offer some tips and insights for new dungeon masters who are like me and just want to get a little head start. And also, hey, I hear I provide wonderful background noise while people are doing their dishes, so you can stick around just for that too. Without further ado, these are just 5 tips for new dungeon masters that I wish I knew before starting out. Now, of course, tip number 1 is how to prep properly. Now, it's no secret that in order to be a dungeon master or a game master for any game, you need to prepare, and you need to spend a lot of time prepping these sessions. 1 hour of prep equals 1 hour of game time, they say, and sometimes it can be even more than that. It's no secret that you need to prep your game, and you need to spend a lot of time doing it. However, there are ways to prep more effectively or even more efficiently so you're not wasting your time. One of those things that I found while DMing was having more general or more loose notes when preparing for my games. Here's what I mean. My players have just entered a dungeon. Now, of course, the goal for the next session would be to finish that dungeon, or my players have just encountered a big boss at the end of our last session. The goal for the next session would be to have an interaction with that big boss, whether it be a roleplay encounter or a straight up fight. Those are goals that I set for myself. Now, of course, most of those goals are going to be easy to finish. Like if the players enter a dungeon, the goal of finishing that dungeon is pretty simple. The players are probably going to do that. However, there are goals that are much more important that you might not focus on as much. Like, for example, the players have just met and built a rapport with this really important NPC in the campaign. Maybe because they built up that friendship and that relationship with that NPC, maybe it's time to reveal some backstory. So you set the goal for yourself of revealing that NPC's backstory, whether it be through another character or maybe through a note left behind by the NPC, or maybe just a straight up talk with the NPC. Those can be goals that you might not keep in your head all the time. Having these more vague goals stop you from sticking to a script, so to speak, because, well, there's a common saying that players ruin your game. I don't see it like that. I see it more as players will subvert your expectations. There are multiple ways to reach a goal. There's multiple ways to reveal an NPC's backstory or to give a player an avenue to power up their character. So setting yourself just a goal instead of like a list of instructions on how to do that will help you to build ideas around this goal, this idea that you've developed. Instead of having just set instructions that your players aren't always going to follow because your players can't read your mind. They're going to do things that subvert your expectations, and having these like very detailed instructions won't always work out for you. More vague goals is going to be better for your campaign. Basically what I'm trying to say is don't be overly detailed with what you want to happen during the session. Set goals for yourself and try to have a variety of avenues to reach those goals instead of setting out instructions. Tip number 2, don't be afraid to be a bit assertive when it comes to rules at your table. Now, this isn't me trying to tell you to be a dick and to be totalitarian over your players. Don't do that. That's just being a bad friend. What I mean is, don't be afraid to tell a player what is or is not acceptable at your table in like a friendly manner. Here's what I mean. Look, your players ideally are your friends, or at least people who like you and want to have fun at your game. They're not your enemy. I know setting down ground rules for a D&D game might seem like something that's a bit rude or unconsiderate to your player. It's almost like you don't trust them. But trust me, your players will appreciate it. Look, most people understand that it's not nice to take out your phone and start playing a video game at the table while someone else is talking. You telling the players that isn't being demeaning. It's reinforcing that you also understand the expectations at the table, and you yourself, the DM, the person who's in control of this whole thing, care about what other people feel. No one likes it when someone isn't paying attention during the game. No one likes it when someone just ghosts the party. No one likes that. Your players don't like that either. You telling them that during session 0 or whenever enforces that you don't like that either, that you're with them. Now, of course, don't be a dick when you do this. I can't exaggerate that enough. That's not going to go over well. Be nice, be considerate, have it be in a more conversational tone. Don't do it like a bullet point list. Don't talk down to your players. Don't give them a lecture. I think you guys understand that. But also, don't be too timid. Don't be afraid to set rules. Rules are important for the players and the DM. So yeah, just telling your players what you expect for the table, like, hey, try not to ghost us, like, make sure to set a schedule beforehand, or make sure to let us know if something comes up. Your players are going to appreciate you caring about that sort of thing just as much as you appreciate your players caring about that sort of thing. Also, while we're on the subject, make sure to be considerate of your fellow players. Ask them what they expect from you as well. They're really going to appreciate that. Asking them if they want you to get food for the table. Asking them if they want you to schedule the games during certain times. Ask them if they have any allergies, so you make sure not to get them something that's going to give them an allergic reaction. Things like that, players are really going to appreciate. Okay, tip number 3. Try not to overwhelm yourself. I definitely had a problem with this starting out. Look, D&D is a big game. It's only restricted by your imagination, and you might be tempted to get your head into all of it. But as a new DM, that's really difficult. I sure as hell couldn't do it. I was trying to build out all these different stories, all of these different world backgrounds, because I was homebrewing my own world, and that was just way out of my league. Now, of course, if you think you can do it, I welcome you to try. However, I recommend just focusing on a session-by-session basis. But just flesh out what's going on, like, right there. If your players are hunting down a strange monster that is being created by a cult, flesh out that cult, flesh out the monster, flesh out the area that they're in, and focus on that. If you have time to focus on other elements, of course, do that too. But make sure that you don't overwhelm yourself while doing that. You don't get distracted while doing that. Because your players don't really care about the dwarven kingdoms that are literally thousands of miles away that they may not even visit in the entire campaign. They, right now, care about the cult and the monster. And of course, you want to make those elements interesting first, before fleshing out all these other elements of your world that your players might not even visit. Don't overwhelm yourself with all the rules of D&D. Of course, you want to know the rules and understand them, but if no one in your player is a monk, don't read all about the monk rules. That might seem obvious to some people, but I had a serious problem with that. I was looking into rules that would never really apply to any of my players. Don't look at spells that they don't have yet. Like, I saw in DM Academy recently, a dungeon master was posting about power word kill and how he can balance power word kill, because he's worried they might kill his final boss, the Lich, in like one hit. Someone asked him, wait, what level are your party? And he said 3, I'm looking out for the future. And everyone responded, oh wait, hold on. If your players are just level 3, you don't need to worry about power word kill. Right? Because they don't even have the spell yet. My point is, just focus on what's happening in the moment for your players, session by session. Tip number 4, you don't need to roll for everything. This one is one that I, again, definitely struggled with in my first, second, and even the beginning of my third campaign. It's a really hard habit to get out of. It's really tempting to make your players roll for almost every single action they want to take. You want to set up a camp? Roll for survival. You want to find a store? Roll for investigation, etc. However, sometimes this can be just more annoying. Your players don't need to roll for everything. And the good rule of thumb is, you only want to make a player roll if there are consequences for failure. For example, rolling to go across a violent river. Yeah, there are definite consequences if you fail that check. And you, as the DM, mind you, need to be ready to play out those consequences. If you're not ready for that, then don't make them roll at all. However, if you are ready, then yeah, make them roll. Rolling across a massive, violent river is definitely something that your players need to be cautious of. However, rolling investigation to like find a store, that's just annoying and can make your players think twice about having to look for basic things like going to the store. Your players shouldn't think twice about that sort of thing. It's just something that they should do. This also applies to checks for what your characters would know. For example, if a knowledge cleric is trying to remember the 6 schools of magic, just tell them what they are. A knowledge cleric would know about that. That's one of the benefits of their whole backstory and class. Don't make them roll for basic knowledge. It would be really silly if they just forgot that, right? There's some things that characters would just naturally know. Like, if you watch Critical Role, you'd know that Fjord, who is one of the characters on Campaign 2 of that show, he's a sailor. And very often, the Dungeon Master, Matthew Mercer, won't make Fjord roll for checks about his sailing knowledge, because he knows those things. He doesn't need to check for his knowledge of, for example, like what city has a lot of pirates. He just knows that. So yeah, don't make your players roll for everything. It's more annoying than fun. Tip number 5. Don't worry about buying things for Dungeons and Dragons. Now, of course, spend money. Like, I'm not telling you not to spend money on the game. You should spend at least a little bit of money to get a map and build yourself a DM screen. Maybe buy yourself like little tokens. But a lot of people start D&D because they watched a show like High Rollers or Critical Role, where they have very elaborate systems and very elaborate maps and minis. A lot of people just can't afford that kind of thing. I am one of those people. I do not have a collection of minis. I don't have 3D battle maps. My main map is just one gridded whiteboard. That's what I have, and that's what I use, and that's great. My players love it. I have all these like flat map pieces that I print out. I also bought Dungeon Craft. It was like $30. I managed to grab myself that book, and it's been wonderful. I make all these little tokens with pieces I find at Home Depot for cheap, about $5. You don't need to spend an exorbitant amount of money to be a DM. Hell, you don't even need to spend the amount of money that I spend. I've spent maybe about, I don't know, like $40 this year on DMing entirely, and that includes all of the materials I use, including the ones I will use for years and years to come. You don't even need to do that. The theater of imagination is a great thing. People play Dungeons & Dragons online with no map, no minis, no nothing. It's perfectly fine. If you're playing an at-home game, don't be afraid to use just whatever you find lying around. Use Lego minifigs. Use random cookie pieces. I saw one guy on Reddit said that he played D&D with Oreo cookies as his minis, and they had a great time. Don't be afraid of buying tons of stuff, because you don't need to do that. Dungeons & Dragons, at its heart, is a game that takes place in your imagination. Not a game that you need to buy these elaborate pieces for. If you want to do that, do that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't spend money in Dungeons & Dragons. That is not at all what I'm saying. If you can and you want to, go for it. Just don't think that you have to do that for your players to enjoy your game or for you to be a good Dungeon Master. At its heart, Dungeons & Dragons is a game of fantasy that we play in our minds, not a game with a price floor. And that's all of them. I hope you guys found this video helpful. Again, I'm not claiming to be some savant at Dungeons & Dragons, but I do hope that it at least helps some of you guys on your journey of dungeon mastering, and I hope that you guys have a lot of fun with this game. It is an amazing time, and it's one of the best things I've ever started doing in my life. So, good luck to all of you new dungeon masters out there. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see more, then please do subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. If you enjoyed this video specifically and want to let me know, then please do hit that like button. And if you have any thoughts, criticisms, etc., then please do put them in the comments down below. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you all next time. Farewell.